to the UIAAAConnection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAAConnection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAAConnection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAAConnection. Today we have two special guests. The first, Mike White, CMAA from Prescott Isle High School in Maine, the athletic director, and Jeremy Schlitz, CMAA, who is the district athletic director in Madison, Wisconsin. Welcome to the podcast, both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
The reason I've got both of them on today is we want to delve into the brand new NIAAA Health and Wellness Committee. Mike is the chair, Jeremy is the vice chair. Before we get into that, though, we want to get to know both of you a little bit personally. So we'll start with Mark. And then Jeremy, tell us a little bit where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, etc.
I grew up in Caribou, Maine, which is just 12 miles up the road here from where I am now. Graduated from Caribou High School in 1985. Went to the University of Maine at Orono. Got my first teaching job in the fall of 1992 in Limestone, Maine, which at the time was one of the largest strategic air command Air Force bases in the country. Once that closed, I moved on to where I am now in the fall of '93, and I've been right here at Prescott Isle since the fall of '93, and have had a nice career here.
Excellent. Jeremy, to you.
Yeah, I went down to UW-Madison. I'm from Wisconsin originally, a couple hours north of Madison in Wausau, Wisconsin, and went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison to become an actuary. And spent a couple years in the business school there. And I was, just as happenstance would have it, my high school basketball coach moved down and was coaching the Madison area, and I volunteered with him and helped me easily recognize that I was going to be more passionate about being involved in education and education-based athletics than number crunching. So transitioned over to there, was a volunteer and coach at Madison Memorial High School throughout college, and was fortunate enough to start my career as a math teacher and coach there. I coached 5 different programs over 15 years and 37 seasons before becoming the athletic director there 13 years ago. And about 6 years in the district, we've got 4 large comprehensive high schools in our district, look towards moving to a district athletics model. And I was tasked with that dual role for the past 6 years. And now I'm just in the sole district athletics director role. So it's never thinks it's somewhere you'd end up when you just wanted to coach and teach and love kids, but it's a great place to be.
Perfect. Mike, let me ask you, how long have you been the AD there in Maine?
In Prescott Isle, this is the start of my 14th year.
Perfect. And so we'll start the next question. Jeremy, talk with our audience a little bit about your youth sports, where you spent them, how many you played.
Yeah, I was a football, basketball, and tennis player in high school. Made it to but played all of them. You know, Little League, we made it to the state championship to go to regionals in the 12 and under year, and I struck out my last 5 at bats because I couldn't hit a curve as a 12-year-old. So that ended my baseball career. But my dad was my tennis coach. My dad was my sister's basketball coach. Education was kind of the family business, and you know, being involved with sports just kind of came naturally. Grew up in a gym and on a court, and it just easily transitioned into being able to do that with my family now.
All right, Mr. White, to you.
Yeah, I played a lot of baseball growing up through Little League and recreation and JV baseball in the high school, but I played varsity golf for that was sort of my thing when I was in high school. I also did a lot of work as a sort of an office aide for the athletic director at my high school, Caribou High School, all during high school. He is a legend among ADs in Maine, and you know, just kind of funny how the world works. And I worked for him for 3 or 4 years, and now I am where I am. But yeah, I was golf was my thing. I like to say that I was the catcher on the Little League team until my sister made the team, and then I was relegated to first base, and that kind of like Jeremy, that sort of spread out my baseball career. But it was my high school sports was golf and working with the athletic director.
Excellent. Let's have both of you talk about some of the mentors and leaders you had in your life that made a difference before you came in AD, when you became in AD, and maybe in the NIAAA. Mark, we'll start with you on this.
Yeah, well, I had my father was heavily involved in soccer in the state of Maine and was very involved on the national level in soccer. And as a kid, I'd go with him to these games all over Maine that he would referee. Met some people, met a bunch of ADs through him. In fact, he's in the NFHS Hall of Fame for his work with soccer on the high school level, and so he certainly had a big impact on me. And just wanting to be out there, in sports, was a good, he was a good role model for me. I'm lucky that I work in a state that has, there's a lot of people who I've sort of hitched my wagon to, and my career is certainly built on theirs. People like Jerry Durgan, people like Dwight Hunter, Bunky Dow. There's a bunch of people there in Maine that I'm fortunate enough not only to be colleagues with, but that they're my friends as well. And I've just been so lucky to work in a state and in an organization like the NIAAA to be able to have those people around me. I mean, literally on a daily basis, and not to mention, the Maine Principals Association, who we work closely with. There have been a lot of good people there who've sort of taken me under their wing and kept me on the straight road. If I when I started to veer, they were right there to get me back on, and I'm very appreciative of that.
Thanks for sharing, Jeremy.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of mentioned my dad as a coach, and I think your parents, obviously, I was fortunate enough to have two parents that were wonderful examples and mentors of, the altruistic approach to life and taking care of others and just enjoying and making connections through community building things like sports. The work my mom did for the teams that my dad was the head coach of, and kind of those types of things that you did really instilled that in me in an early age. And I think coming to college and having that opportunity to volunteer to start with, but to learn from some people. I'm fortunate enough that the athletic director at that time, who's in the Wisconsin Hall of Fame, Gary Colpine, was my first athletic director and kind of really instilled in me what it means to be a leader of an athletic department. Dr. John Olson, who I'm sure many are familiar with, I actually think I've
Absolutely.
still got his Formica top desk that I sat in. I'm actually in his job now as the district athletic director in Madison, and been fortunate enough to be able to run into him at the grocery store, and just the presence to people like that, and some of the leadership that we've had in Wisconsin, has really been fortunate as I developed as an athletic administrator. I was fortunate enough to be the president of the association in 2019, following Peggy Seegers-Braun, who's been very involved, and just learning from different people in different scenarios has been really, really those that came before me, and I'm very fortunate that path that I had. And now really, I think I look to my mentors or people that inspire me. I've got a 6 and 9-year-old daughters that are really what gives me the energy to want to do this work, to create and conserve the wonderful thing that education-based athletics is, the true amateurism, the true meaning that we have to give those opportunities to kiddos. And I can see it every day, and I get to watch them look up to those high school kids and athletes and want to create even a better experience for them. Is really an easy way to get up and be inspired every day. And as much as sometimes they may frustrate me, they drive me. And I think that's been a wonderful kind of cyclical way that I've, come into this role and hopefully continue to have a positive impact for those that come after me.
Thank you both for sharing. Let me ask one more little personal question of you both, and then we'll get into the meat of why I have you on the podcast today. So the question is, first to you, Jeremy, what is your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
I think if I specific to the athletic administrator, I applied for the athletic director job at Madison Memorial 5 times before I got it. And it wasn't a failure, it was a disappointment. And I was trying to, as you mentioned that word failure, I mentioned those 5 times I struck out to end my baseball career. I'm not sure that was a failure. I just knew that I'd want to teach kids after me how to hit a curve, so they knew that before they got to it. And maybe we lost some games. I was fortunate enough to be in 9 straight state championships in basketball, and we lost 6 of those games. But those weren't failures, and I think just kind of learning from that, and those were disappointments. And I think in athletic administration, a disappointment I mentioned of applying for a job and not getting it, a lot of times come because you need to be ready for it, and the job needs to be ready for you. And being able to use that lesson and message, whether that's for our student athletes or our coaches, is, maybe you're ready for it, but they're not ready for you, or they're ready for you, but you're not ready to take that risk yet. It's really about, those things coming together, and using those as learning experiences, opportunities, and just motivation. When we're disappointed, we need to use that as a motivator. And I think some things like that, I've been fortunate to not have what I would consider failures, just disappointments that made me stronger going forward.
Thank you. Mark?
I think in starting the job, it took me a while to realize that you didn't have to fight every battle, and you didn't have to take kerosene to try to put out a fire. And I think if I were to know what I know and to go back, I think a little more diplomacy on my part might have served me well earlier in my career. And in choosing your battles, choosing, when I first started, I kind of had this idea that I went from, one day being a social studies teacher, then waking up the next day and I was the athletic director, and all of a sudden there was some, in the middle of the night, I was imparted with all this knowledge, and I knew everything going in the first time. And I think that, to use your folks around you, and, people want to see you succeed. And I guess, I've worked with some new ADs, and that's kind of what I want to say. I've learned to use the people around me. I've learned to use the people who've been there and done that, and that has served me very well.
Thank you. Let's get into the meat of the conversation now, gentlemen. The reason I have you on today is the NIAAA has established the brand new NIAAA Health and Wellness Committee. Mark, you're the chair. Jeremy, you're the vice chair. The question for both of you: take us through where this idea originated. It was an ad hoc committee at one time. Now it's become a full committee. So I'll leave it up to you, two of you, to take us through that.
But it started about a year ago. Jeremy and I were approached by Phil Risen and Rich Barton to meet with them on a Zoom call. And they asked us about this committee, about the ad hoc, and the ad hoc was to sort of look at the mental and emotional wellness of not only coaches and student athletes, but also of athletic administrators. And we used that year as an ad hoc just to try to talk things over. What does this committee going to look like? What are sort of the things that it what are our goals? What are our short-term goals? What are our long-term goals? And I steal Jeremy's saying is that it was great that they gave us a blank canvas, but it was also very scary that they gave us a blank canvas, because we really were we really were starting brand new. And the good thing that what served us very well is talking to people who organized the new mentoring and DEI committees, where they were at this point, and we're a great asset to us as we move forward. But I think sort of the foundation of the committee, or the idea of the committee, was going that COVID brought to light a lot of issues that we have, that everybody has, whether you're an AD, a coach, or a student. And what my take on it was at the time is that the NIAAA wanted a committee or a group out there that could help share best practices of establishing good emotional and mental healthness, and kind of started with us. So that's kind of where I am. I do think it's a product of COVID. I think COVID brought up a lot of issues that were well embedded prior to that, but after going through what we went through those 12 or 16 months, I think it became evident that mental and emotional health is something that needed to be addressed on a more formal in a more formal way.
And I think, Hutch, also to kind of go back, I think I was fortunate enough to be part of the fifth NIAAA strategic plan group. And we started talking about, that was really kind of the inflection point around retention and burnout in our athletic administrators and those sorts of things that also contribute to health and wellness. And I think that was kind of where this started, was right, like, what are we doing to help our membership be able to continue to be part of our membership? And part of that ad hoc group, and also kind of the partnership, and Mark and I were both part of a USCA partnership that then this organically came out of. And also, I think, I was part at our state level of some things in Wisconsin, bringing some mental health resources to the state membership. And I think Rich and Phil and everybody started to just see these pockets of focus on mental health and emotional wellness. And Mark and I were fortunate enough to be able to do some of this work, and then asked and to pull together a great group of people and move that work forward.
Well, so I'm a little curious, and I know it's tough for both of you to talk about it. So Mark, you're the chair, Jeremy, the vice chair. They just asked you, did you have to apply? I mean, it's a brand new committee. I know when I was the chair of the awards committee, and this is 20 years ago, and I was a member first, then I became applied to be the vice chair, then I got named to be the chair. I'm just not sure how it works with a brand new committee. So both of you address that.
I honestly don't know, but what I could say is each year I apply for a committee position, and I'm representing Section 1 on this committee. So I don't know if I was in a big pile of applicants or not, or part of the USCO, but like I said, it was just sort of a kind of out of the blue to, hey, do you want to meet with Mr. Rise and Mr. Barton? It's like, and see what they wanted, and that's the acknowledge to the point. That's what I know anyway, I guess.
I think similarly, and I was looking forward to be part of a committee, and also I'd done some presentations at nationals which touched on some of these mental and emotional health topics, as a reason around difficult conversations, or some of our DEIB work, and the role that mental health and wellness plays in those spaces. And maybe it was just something that hopefully had received some positive feedback. And I think Mark and I also have the wonderful or horrible quality of having trouble saying no to something that we believe in and love. And I guess that Rich picked up on that and was smart enough to ask us.
That is great. So congratulations to both of you. I want to talk about one of your goals. I'm familiar with this goal because, the three of us obviously have a mutual friend in Craig Perry from USCA, obviously an AD for many, many years. But I know there's a goal of the committee to get a coordinator, similar to a coordinator, a certification coordinator, an LTI coordinator, and we want a coordinator in each state. And so talk about biting off that big of a goal to begin with, and talk about the progress. I know at least in Utah we have one, Amy Robinson. And so I'm just turning the floor over to you to talk about that, because I think that's a great goal to have.
I'll go right here, Jeremy. You can fill in where I leave off. I think we saw the success in Maine. I saw the success rather of the new DEI position, as well as the mentoring position, and they've been very effective in Maine. And I think part of the reason for the committee was to establish some type of networking among the 50 states. So so Jeremy and I, for example, could share what's our best practice that are happening in our states over mental and emotional health, and share those. So I think one of the big one of the big like motivators behind the committee forming is sort of getting that networking out there. And it seemed at the time logical that we could go down the same path as a mentoring committee and the DEI committee, in having a point person in each of the state that can stay close to the committee, as well as have those resources that they could pick from around the around the country rather.
And I think, like anything we do in our athletic administration, stealing great ideas from others and kind of adapting it to your situation is kind of what Mark talked about. But I also think what we recognized was, just like the job of the athletic administrator is different in different parts of our country and different states, resources that are there are often regional or state-based around like employee assistance programs, or access that they have to different mental health resources, or university programs that are then tied in with schools and how they support those. And instead of just kind of that word of mouth, having a really intentional and systemic way to say, let's bring these things to all of our membership. And mental health specifically, you need to have some trust and vulnerability with the people that you feel that they understand the situation that you're in. So having that state and that local presence, I think will allow more people the comfort to access, hopefully, some of the services and some of the benefits that we're hoping the committee can provide.
Excellent. Let's talk for a minute about, we talked off the podcast about the presence that you want to have in Austin, what that's going to look like. I know I spoke with Craig Perry just 2 days ago, and he and I have been doing the talking and trading, I think, the past 2 or 3 years on this subject. And then he said he's also doing a workshop with you, Jeremy. So let's have you start with this, and then go back to Mark, and let's talk about Austin and what's your picture of what's going to be available, and what our ADs need to be looking forward to.
Yeah, fortunate enough that Craig and I have a session together, one of the workshops on Sunday, but bookending those will be kind of a networking event on Saturday, where we have people that are interested in this topic will be able to get together, and we can I think this will be one of those steps for us to be able to identify potential state liaisons for us, but also just kind of some implementers for that work. And then hopefully, those that are truly passionate about it will kind of hit that initial networking session, see the workshop that we're going to present with some things that they can bring back, but come back on Tuesday, at that talking, trading, or lunch and learn with some things they can take back to their states and their communities of actual activities, actual resources, and just start that conversation. So when we get to Tampa, in 16 months, we've established some of those structures, and it can kind of start to be, an organic development of some of those things like we've seen from those committees before us. So those 3 sessions, it's great to have that opportunity to really introduce the committee members, and partner there with USCA on those 3 things, and bring as many people as possible in to hear from us. And Mark, I know we've got a couple other things that we're kind of planning for Austin, and also foreshadowing already. Hard to believe we've already just moved past Austin and getting ready for Tampa too, but we know that's the way it works.
Yeah, Frey, it's going to be modest in Austin. Everybody who, as part of the registration packet, the committee's been working with Becky Moran a little bit, and we're going to have an informational document in there about the committee, something that people can have to look over and find out what we're all about. Hopefully, that might spur some interest in the states for people wanting to be the sort of that liaison, that state liaison. And our goal, as Jeremy said, is probably down the road a little bit, but what we would like to do at national conventions is to provide something as a model of what each state could take back and do during their state conferences. Whether it be some relaxation things, stress, but something at the how to deal with stress rather. But the goal is for us as a committee to provide some modeling for states to take back to their conferences, and maybe do something with health and wellness during their state conferences.
Let me ask you this, and I'm familiar with USCA and how it works. And I'll throw this out, not saying that Utah has the answers, but Amy Robinson, who is our state coordinator, and of course Wendy and I is on your committee. But Amy went to Craig, and who went to USCA, and basically said, we want a different 10 courses than USCA's given us for the basic 10. And they worked with her, and she and the committee here in Utah picked the 10 that they want. And of course, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but the Utah Association, if your school or your district's not going to pick that up, the Utah Association will pay that $35 in order to have everyone become level 1. So talk about maybe some other ideas from some other states, maybe from your 2 states, and talk about that and see, or just share some of the successes that you've had.
Yeah, I can jump in. A few years ago, as I kind of rotated off our board, we brought in we have a legal counsel member benefit in Wisconsin, where we have on retainer a lawyer, and that was kind of the model I went with. And what we did is I reached out to a couple of organizations or individuals that provide some mental health services, and we contracted with them to provide those things for our membership. One created a monthly newsletter around it. Another one provided some things at our conference and a couple of Zoom calls to practice some of those mental health wellness activities as a group. And I think that's the sort of thing USCA is able to offer, such a wide network with those online courses, and also just learning from all those ideas and experiences to figure out what works best and kind of create a menu of different possibilities. And I think especially specific to mental and emotional health, you've got to meet people where they're comfortable. And for some, it's going to be comfort that it's a one-on-one asynchronous computer exercise course to just kind of get some background. Others may want some interactive stuff. So I think that's really going to be an important part of this conference, is to meet with people and find out what they're doing either locally. I was part of our school district superintendent's mental health advisory group as we came back from COVID, and learning about some of those resources that are out there that we don't necessarily know are there, but are wonderful things for somebody. And I think being able to connect those dots is really going to be the most impactful thing we can do as a committee. And starting that in Austin with meeting people that have had experience or passionate about it, or are just looking for, like, I want this, how do I find it? And I think that is something that's going to be great. And USCA and Dr. Perry and that group have been wonderful resources. And I think we just want to continue to make a larger menu so all our members can get something that they're looking for out of it. And I think the program you've got going there in Utah is a phenomenal example of somebody just taking the initiative to find something that works and take a chance on it. Because if we take a chance on our mental health and help ourselves as athletic administrators, the impacts it has for our kids, coaches, and community is going to be exponential.
Yeah, and I think in Maine, we're at the very early part of this right now. I mean, we sort of planted the seeds in April at last year at our state conference. Rich Barton happened to be in attendance, and he spoke to the ADs. I did as well, and there's a lot of interest in this sort of idea of mental and emotional wellness. And one of the things is that is to provide opportunities, like Jeremy was talking about. And I think getting the word about resources is one of the committee's main goals. Here's an article, for example, read that. But in terms of Maine and what we're doing right now is we're just getting started. And what's going on in Utah, and like Jeremy was saying, kind of getting the feel of the members in each state is going to be a first. The first real project I know in Maine is just to find out where people are at.
Let me turn some time over to both of you to talk about anything that I may not have mentioned, something that you want to bring up that I haven't asked a question about, because as we talked about earlier, brand new committee, we talked about the presence we want in Austin and later in Tampa, but I just want to give you a few minutes apiece or more just to talk about the committee and what else there is that maybe I didn't speak specifically about.
Well, I'll talk about the committee a little bit. Is we have 8 very motivated people on there who want to get going, and when we meet, it's just one thing after another, and people want to get going. And I think that once we sort of, so we're still kind of finding our way. But once we get up and running and these people and their talents are starting to, to work for them and for the members, that this is going to be a very impactful committee. And, I consider myself blessed with the people who are on it. And like I said, they're motivated, highly intelligent, and want to get out and help. And I think that would be the best thing. And Jeremy, I don't know.
Yeah, I think one other thing that we really want to do, which maybe we haven't touched on, is really bring the visibility. And I think there's sometimes a stigma associated with addressing mental health, and also a difficulty for some of us as servant leaders to be selfish is the wrong word. It's to be, take care of ourselves first so we can take care of others. And, I think those two things go hand in hand, and making a presence known that it's okay not to be okay, that we need help, and we need to take care of ourselves, because if we are not emotionally healthy, if we're struggling with some mental health difficulties as individuals, we can't show up the way we need to show up for our coaches, for our kids, for all the things that come to us. And I think the other piece that we need to just acknowledge and speak to is how hard this job is and becomes, and there's always the next thing. And Mark spoke to this a little bit more, but we also are everybody's willing to walk into an athletic director's door and dump what their stressor is onto us. And I think a lot of us kind of take that on, and that burden and that weight continues to grow on us. And we need to take care of ourselves because we're taking care of others so often, and trying to get that message out there and get that belief. And I think for me, I would tell people all the time to take care of their mental health, to take a break, to take 48 hours off of email, to actually go on a vacation and not worry about it, to go seek out a therapist because they're having such difficulties. And I never took any of my own advice. And I think finally a few years ago, I started to take that own advice and recognize it was okay. It couldn't be person specific. If I was gone, things had to work out okay, because I've set that up, and I had to be okay with somebody else taking on those responsibilities. And about a year and a half ago, I started working with my own therapist, and it's the greatest $20 I spend as a copay every 2 weeks to be able to have somebody else listen and help me process all of the things that come at us. And I think putting that out for this group, and oftentimes now as we continue to evolve our profession and what high school athletics looks like, to move out of that mindset of needing to suppress our emotions. Instead, we need to just accept and understand how to use them, to really have a full and complete experience, and to get that message out there that there's maybe others that are thinking this, and it's really hard because this is a really vulnerable and tough topic to kind of be willing to put yourself out there for. I'm extremely excited and energized that the NIAAA is doing this, but also the interest that we've had in the committee, the interest from the committee members, and just like the wonderful, huge ideas we have, but the energy behind them. So I think that's something that has been like it is a lot of things that we do as athletic directors. The work has been so rewarding, and doing this in mental health and emotional health, which is something I've become much more passionate about, and recognize how making myself more cognizant of it has made me able to be a better parent or partner or athletic administrator.
Thank you both for sharing that. And we want to wrap up the podcast with a couple of questions. The first being, you've got 2 suggestions for a brand new AD. They need to follow Jeremy's suggestions. They need to follow Mark's suggestions in order to become a success. I want each of you to address it and tell us what your 2 suggestions would be. We'll begin with you, Jeremy.
I think my first one is find somebody who you're willing to just be aggressively transparent with. I'm working as our state mentor coordinator in Wisconsin, but finding somebody that you can commiserate with, to be able to be a partner in the good times and in the bad. And sometimes that's not in your school, because you can recognize that when you're an athletic administrator, even though you may be at rival schools, you both are taking care of each other. So be willing to find that, whether it's a small group or an individual, that you can just be your true self with and unload those things, I think is really important. And my other suggestion is find a way to get yourself feedback from people whose feedback you value. We get a lot of feedback, as Mark alluded to, but be intentional and maybe get some feedback from your principal or your superintendent or your school board or someone who you trust that they are giving you an objective opinion and want to help you become better at what you do by sharing maybe some blind spots that you have. And you got to be open to understanding that critique is really something that's going to make you stronger. So finding the right people to do those two things for you, I think is what's going to get you past that 1 to 4 year gap. And I think as long as and that's where a majority of our membership is. So I guess we can just say the secret is if you make it to your 5th year, it just gets a lot easier, right? Can we say that? So that would be my advice: is find those people and find those ways where you can get that honest, true, and genuine feedback.
Thank you, Jeremy. Mark, your 2 suggestions.
I think the first one is to be a sponge. Find a mentor. Don't wait for one to get appointed to you. Go out and find somebody. Find a couple of people who, on the professional level that you can trust, not only that you can be honest with, but who will be honest with you. And find out, you use those people, like I said before, use those people around you. You're not in this alone. I think as ADs, especially, when you work with leagues and committees and things, it's to my benefit if the people who I spend most of my time working with are the best they can be. So if I can help people be good, and it'll help me be good, if that makes any sense or not. But be a sponge. And the second one is, it's hard to understand this, and it's hard, but it's not personal. I think, one of the things Jeremy said is this is about retention. And I firmly believe that the retention issue lies in the fact that as a society, we tend to unload on people. And that's hard. I mean, even after, I've developed pretty thick skin, but every once in a while, it hurts, and it's going to hurt. But just remember that these people have got a lot going on in their lives sometimes, and you just happen to be there. And a lot of times they just want you to listen. So, even though it's hard, it's not personal. It's just, it's the circumstance. And like I said, that has helped me a lot, even though it's still troublesome at times, but it's gotten better.
Thank you. Some great suggestions for both of you. We'll finish with this question, first to Mark and then to Jeremy. What question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
I don't know. I don't. I think what I want people to know about the committee is that, we're a work in progress. I want that to all the executive directors to know. We're gonna have our growing issues, but I want people to know that they could become involved, be one of those 50, be one of those 50 coordinators. Be the person that Jeremy talks about that somebody can open up to. I think that's I don't know necessarily. I think people can get involved a lot of ways in this. If it's not directly, it's sort of, in other ways about being there for people and being a support for people. So I guess I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that's something I want people to understand, is that we're a new committee, we're fighting, but there's a lot of ways to get involved that doesn't involve being on a committee, doesn't involve going into a national conference. It involves being there for somebody as a as like Jeremy said, as a support system.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, I think Hutch, the question maybe could have been, do you see yourself retiring as an athletic administrator? You talked about the early AD part, and I really think about that. And so people ask me that as I see people cycle out of the profession, whether that's to another educational administrative role or getting out of education-based athletics together. And I think I see myself retiring as an athletic administrator. This is my passion that I get paid for. It's my profession. It's kind of my identity in a lot of ways. And how did I get there? Because as I talked about in my early story, that's not what I was going to grow up to become, and how do you know that this is something you want to do forever? I think it is what Mark spoke to about being a sponge and the fortunate things that we have and being willing to have a relationship. I remember sitting down at my first national conference next to Peggy Seegers-Braun, who's a past president in Wisconsin and part of the awards committee and a wonderful leader in our state and throughout. And she was just, so inviting, so showing me what this is about. And, I was lucky enough to have my predecessors be very involved. And what I learned is this isn't a job, when you're an athletic administrator. It's just kind of a way of doing things. And it's such a great group of people that if you are willing to let yourself be part of this community, it's something that you're going to want to stay part of. So put yourself out there. I want to retire as an athletic administrator because of the wonderful people that are athletic administrators. Some of them will come and go, but for us being willing to do it is just it's the most rewarding thing. I'd been to plenty of conventions and conferences before, but our state conference and the national conference are my favorite days of the year. It's better than any other days. It's so energizing. Everybody thinks it's hard to take time away from what you have to do, but what you have to do is just immerse yourself in the wonderful community that is education-based athletics and the NIAAA, and it's not something I could imagine being not part of. And I hope that our committee can help bring us some way that way, but also just being able to meet people and the experiences that we have when you're willing to say yes, I think is why the three of us are on the screen that we're on, and appreciate the opportunity to share this with others, and hopefully somebody will remember that and want to stick through what gets to be the tough times that all of us experience.
So very well said. On that note, that wraps it up for this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guests today, Mark White, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, and Jeremy Schlitz, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, the Chair and the Vice Chair of the NIAAA Health and Wellness Committee. Thank you both for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for having us.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.